Hi guys, you want to know the best photo settings for the little ZV-E10 or the a6400 or pretty much any of the Sony mirrorless APS-C lineup? Of course you do, otherwise why would you click on my stupid face? So let's get into it, let's do it! Okay, so this is going to be a settings only video. If you want to check out examples of photos, I did a little photo walk up here in the Distillery District in Toronto. It was a nice little afternoon. I stopped into a bar and I had a couple of apple juices. It was a good time. But today I'm having an apple juice at home and we're talking about settings. Okay, let's go into the menu here. I reset my camera so you guys could follow along with me. See what I do? I reset all my stuff for you guys. This way there's no surprises. All right, page 1, file format. JPEG. Go to RAW plus JPEG. Now, as of October 22nd, 2021, the Lightroom Capture One, they still don't support the RAW files for the ZV-E10. All the other Sony cameras will be fine, but you can convert your RAW photos to TIFF photos right now using the Sony imaging software, and then Lightroom will accept them. But they're going to update Lightroom probably in November. They usually update it every quarter or so. So I think November is their next update. It should be included then. So what I do is I just set it to RAW plus JPEG, and then I save my files on a folder, and I will import them into Lightroom later on. And I like to have the JPEG because I like a JPEG option in case I want to zip a JPEG from the camera right to my phone to upload it to my TikTok. Is where I can pop my booty. What do people do on TikTok? Anyway, JPEG image is extra fine. Just because why not, right? JPEG size, definitely 24 megapixels. You want as many megapixels as you can. Aspect ratio, I leave it on 3:2. That's what people, the standard for photographers for many years is 3:2. You can switch it to 4:3. That's micro four thirds, often is 4:3. The 16:9, that can be good if you want to shoot pictures for a thumbnail for YouTube, for instance. That's a 16:9. So if you wanted to match your 16:9 footage, you know, your video footage, you can use the 16:9, and the 1:1 is a square, so that's really good for social media, things like Instagram uploading, but I usually leave it on 3.2. It's up to you. So let's see, color space, lens comp. I turned the distortion compensation on auto because, like, if you are using the kit lens or certain Sony lenses, this is going to be grayed out for you right now. But for me, I'm using the Sigma 16mm f1.4. This is a third-party lens, so I turned that on auto because I don't want those rounded GoPro edges when I'm taking photos or video. Now, page 3, we're going to go to Intelligent Auto, and we are turning that off. Warning. Low battery, says my Ninja 5. We'll get through this. The Intelligent Auto, definitely turn that off. Now, most people will tell you to set your camera in aperture priority because then you can just control your f-stop. So if you want a blurry background, you set your, f-stop to 1.8. If you want everything in focus, like let's say you're doing a landscape, you can set it to f11 and everything's in focus, and the camera will take care of the rest. And so you know what? I set this camera to this one, manual, and it's not scary. It's super, I'll explain it, but for now, let's put it in aperture priority because why not try that mode out for yourself and see how that goes. I will explain why I use manual mode at the end of the video. So drive mode, single shooting, I mean, that's fine. I sometimes do the single shooting, but I like to switch it usually to high. That way, when you hold down the shutter, it takes a burst of photos, and that's good. If you have moving subjects and things like that, you know, the burst, you might get more in focus. It's up to you what you want to do with that. One single one is one shot. The burst mode, you can do high, mid, low, or extra high. I just turn it on high. These things here are timer modes if you want the camera to go off at a certain time. And these here are bracketing, and we'll get into bracketing maybe in a different video because that will take too long to explain. So right now, just put it in high. It's a good thing to do. Now, page 4, we go to continuous autofocus. Sony has great continuous autofocus. You know, you can go to manual focus or single autofocus, but continuous autofocus, Sony excels at that. I find it's the best mode for focusing. Now, focus area, for some reason, the default is on tracking, whereas I think wide is your best case scenario. And wide is very good on this camera because it will often grab the thing you want in screen, and if it's a person you want, it has face and eye auto detect on, so it will immediately go to a person's eye, and then that person will be in focus. And if you don't want that focused on, the person focused on, or what the camera thinks the wide focused on, you can just touch the back of the screen to the focus point that you want, and we will set that up to make sure that you can do that. I will show you that also at the end of the video, but for right now, put the focus area on wide. Face, eye, we just check, make sure that's okay, and it is. And frame, nothing here on page 5 you need to change. Now here on page 6, again, you don't need to change anything. Metering mode multi is usually a good idea. The ISO is auto because you're going to want the camera to control the ISO if you're in aperture priority, or if you're also in manual like I do. I like to leave white balance in auto and ISO in auto because the camera does a good job of that, and especially if you are using RAW, then you don't have to worry about your white balance. Page 7 is fine, and page 8, the white balance. What I'm talking about here, just leave that in auto. The camera does a good job. When it's a RAW photo, you can change it if you want. Now, what you do want to change is this dynamic range optimizer. So turn that off, because that is really related to JPEGs, and it will optimize the photo for your JPEG. So you'll be looking at your screen at an optimized photo for JPEG, but that is not what your RAW photo, and your RAW photo will often be underexposed. So you turn that off to get the preview of what your photo will look like for your RAW data, which is really what you want. The creative style standard and picture profile off, leave that off. Skin softening effect, if that's somehow on, turn that off. But mine was off by default here. Now, peaking setting here on, got my menu up on my Ninja 5. Peaking setting, you want to go in there and turn that on. And then peaking level, turn to high, and peaking color, red. I find red is easiest to see. Now, that is only for manual focus. So when you do switch to manual focus, and sometimes you have to, then what you want to do is be able to see with the red peaking what is in focus and what is not, because the screens on the Sonys are their Achilles heel. They are really bad screens for the most part, so you can't rely on your eye to help you judge focus. So definitely turn on the peaking. Product showcase, that's all off, that's fine. And now we'll moving into the movie tab here. You won't have to change anything because we're doing photos on the first one here. Second page, nothing to change, and third page, nothing to change. Once again, nothing on the fourth. Silent shooting. Now this is off by default. You should leave that off. That means your shutter will make a sound. It's the mechanical shutter, and that is a good idea on this camera because the Sony APS-C cameras has a slow readout, a slow sensor readout, which means you're going to get a lot of rolling shutter, which you've probably heard a lot about on the YouTube. But usually people are talking about video when they say it, but it can also happen in photos. So you can get flicker from lights when you have rolling shutter. And you can also, if an object is moving fast, if a car is driving past at a certain speed and you click the photo in silent shutter, the electronic shutter, you're going to get more rolling shutter. The car is going to look more slanted. Things that should look straight up will look slanted. Like if you have a biker, a bicyclist, a cyclist, a Tour de France. You're at Tour de France. Tour de France. So if you're at Tour de France and a cyclist is going past you quickly, and one of those guys on steroids that has one testicle, he's going past you quickly, he's going to look all slanted in the electronic shutter. He will look less slanted in the mechanical shutter. I'm not saying you will completely eliminate rolling shutter, but you will do a much better job of eliminating rolling shutter. Now, there are times you're going to need to use silent mode if you're at a wedding and things like that, but that's okay because the bride and groom are not cycling. If they are, you're at a weird wedding, and that's interesting. And they probably won't mind the mechanical shutter at that wedding, but those guys are kooky. But regular situations, you know, where you need to have silent shutter, but things aren't moving fast, that's fine. But as a general rule, leave the silent shooting off so that you will get less rolling shutter problems on your camera. Okay, this release without lens, you can turn that to enable, because if you are using a manual lens, a fully manual lens, the camera won't let you shoot any photos unless you enable that particular function. So turn that on, why not, right? Now when it comes to page 7, you go to the zebra settings, and I like to turn those on, and I turn it on 100. That way I know when my scene is going to get blown out. If I am shooting a picture and I want the sky in there, but it's got zebra lines all over it, I know that I'm going to lose that information. My sky is going to look blown out in my photo, so I will lower my exposure until those zebra lines disappear. It is a very good idea to know where the limits of your camera are, so that's why I like to set the zebras in photos at 100. Okay, what's next? Right here, page 8, this function menu set. This is what we will get into at the end. This is a very important setting. You can set up on this little FN button on the back of your camera, and that is the quick function menu. That will allow you to get to a lot of settings quickly, and with a camera like this and most Sony cameras that don't have a ton of customizable buttons, you really rely on that function menu. So we will get back to that. Here on page 9 of 9, mine is grayed out because I'm using a Ninja 5, and so certain functions get grayed out when I am putting the menu over there. But you want to go into this function of touch operation, the function of touch operation, turn off the tracking and turn on the focus, the tap to focus. And because that makes, if you want to do the tracking, like let's say you have a subject moving around the frame and you want to keep them tracked, you can track them and then just hold down the shutter button, and that's good. But I find far more useful is when I have touch to focus, because like I said earlier in the video, if you have a person in the frame and it grabs their eye, and that's great, but you don't want that person's eye. You want to take a photo of the skateboard that they have next to them. You can just drag your finger over and touch that, and now the skateboard is in focus and not the person's dumb face. And that is why you can set your autofocus to be wide and then have face detect autofocus on, but you enable touch tracking and you have the best of all worlds. Do you know what I mean? And the next place we need to go over is the toolbox here. The monitor brightness, again, this is grayed out on the Ninja 5. Maybe I should have just recorded the back of the screen. I just wanted it to look nice. I'm shooting myself in the foot here. But go into monitor brightness, turn it on sunny weather. You want to turn it on sunny weather in the monitor brightness, because when you're out in the daytime. If it's the night, is a dim environment, or you're in the studio, you don't necessarily need the sunny weather. But if you're ever outside, the screen, as I say, not that great on these things. And by not that great, pretty bad on these things. So you're going to want to definitely turn on the sunny weather. Oh, and the power setting option at the end, turn that power auto power off temp to high. That will help in video especially, but you don't want the camera overheating. And if you turn the auto power off temp to high, then the temperature to high, it's going to not overheat very easily. So that's the way to go with that. And I believe that is it. So yes, let's go back now. Use my FN button to quickly scale through the menu, and we'll go over to our function menu set, page 8 of 9 in tab 2. Now with this function menu set, you have it broken, is certainly on the ZV-E10, you have it broken into two. There's the function for the camera, and then the function menu for the video. Of course, we're doing the photos right now. If you want to know about the video settings, I will put them up here. I already did a video about that, but there's a bunch of garbage here that you don't need. Like, look at this. This is skin softening effect. I don't want that. I like to switch it to let's see, the zebra level. That way I can change my zebra level. I can change my zebra level on the fly, and I think that is far more useful. Now the product showcase mode, I like to get rid of that as well, and I like to turn on the face tracking. So where's that face tracking? This face or eye priority in autofocus. Now I like to turn that on because that way, if the camera keeps grabbing people's faces when I don't want it to grab people's faces, then I can turn that off quickly if I'm trying to take photos of things that aren't people's faces. And the last one I change is picture profile, because you definitely don't need picture profile when you're taking photos. You want to leave that off. And so I like to set that one to silent shooting. Now, where is the silent shooting? There it is. Page 12, you want to set on the silent shooting because there are times when you want to turn the shutter on or off, depending on your preference. You know, if you're somewhere quiet, you don't want to scare the golf people, so you turn it on the silent setting there. And then, you know what? That's it. That is it for what you need to know about setting up. Now let me talk about why I put my camera in manual mode instead of aperture priority for this particular camera. You see right here, so now on my quick menu, you can see I can change it quickly if I want. So again, program mode, if you want the camera to do all of the work and still have your raw photos, use program mode. Aperture priority is the one that a lot of people will go to. And I would use that on many cameras as long as I can set a minimum shutter speed. You see, if your shutter speed is too low, you're going to get blurry images. So if the subject, let's say you're photographing a kid and he's moving, then he'll be blurry. Or your handshake, it'll be blurry. If both are happening, it'll be super blurry. So you need, if you have a faster shutter speed, it will freeze action. So really, really slow shutter speeds can create that silky looking waterfall, and really high shutter speeds will freeze the water, so you will see every little droplet. So what I like to do is set it in manual, and it's not as scary as it sounds because the camera is still going to use auto ISO and auto white balance, and they'll take care of that for me. And I just set my shutter speed once and I forget about it. For general shooting, I will put it at 1/500 and leave it there. And then I can manipulate my f-stop however I want, if I want a blurry background or I want everything in focus, like some kind of landscape. And if I have things that are moving more quickly, like I was noticing my kids, I couldn't get really steady shots. Because remember, this camera has no stabilization. So what I did is I bumped my shutter speed to 1/1000. And if you don't know, it's just the wheel. When you're using manual mode, so the dial on the top will be aperture and the little wheel will be shutter speed. So you can do it that way. And I like to set it at 1/1000, and all my pictures came out sharp from that point on. Now the only thing is, if you are in a dim environment and your shutter speed is too high, then your ISO, the ISO on your camera is going to have to be cranked. Anyway, when you're out in the daytime and you're shooting and you're not worried about low light situations, that's what I'll say to you. If you're not worried about low light situations, it's the daytime, don't worry about setting your shutter speed to 1/500 or 1/1000. And if it's sports or action, don't worry about going to even faster. Go to 1/2000, 1/4000, and then it maxes out at 1/4000 on the camera. So that is how you eliminate shake. I should do a whole separate video about that. So in a nutshell, go with aperture priority. If you are getting shaky footage, put it in manual, then adjust your aperture how you want and your shutter speed to 1/500 or higher, and see where that takes you. So that's it. Those are all the settings you need to get started to take amazing photos, because don't let that camera fool you. That 24 megapixel APS-C sensor can take fantastic photos. So you get to know your camera, you can adjust it to your own taste, but start with the settings that I just showed you, and you'll be off to the races. Soon, you'll be a professional photographer, just like me, sitting in his basement, drinking, talking to you guys. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. Okay, bye-bye.